Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all my brothers and sisters. Welcome to the Roots of Islam channel. Picture this. A world-renowned scientist who has spent decades peering into microscopes studying the very building blocks of human sight suddenly finds himself kneeling on a prayer mat in March 2024. Dr. Henry Klassen, the brilliant mind behind revolutionary stem cell treatments that restore vision to the blind, has made a decision that shocked the entire scientific community. This isn't just another conversion story, this is the tale of a man who literally gives sight to the blind, only to discover he himself had been spiritually blind all along. What could possibly drive a Harvard-trained physician, a UC Irvine professor, and a pioneer in retinal reconstruction to abandon everything he thought he knew about life and embrace Islam? The answer will challenge everything you think you know about faith, science, and the human heart. Henry John Klassen wasn't born into privilege or handed his success on a silver platter. His journey began at UC Berkeley, where his undergraduate fascination with neural plasticity first sparked. Even as a young student, Henry possessed an unusual gift: the ability to see patterns where others saw chaos, to find hope where others saw impossibility. This unique perspective led him to pursue dual MD and PhD studies at the University of Pittsburgh, a grueling path that breaks most who attempt it. But Henry wasn't most people. He thrived under pressure, driven by a singular obsession, understanding how damaged neural tissue could be regenerated. Little did he know that his quest to restore physical sight would eventually lead him to discover spiritual vision he never knew existed. By the time Dr. Klassen established himself at UC Irvine's Gavin Herbert Eye Institute, he'd already begun making medical history. His work on stem cell-based retinal reconstruction wasn't just innovative, it was miraculous. Imagine patients who'd lived in darkness for years suddenly seeing their children's faces for the first time. Henry's research into retinitis pigmentosa, a genetic disease that gradually destroys light-sensing cells, offered hope where medicine had previously offered only despair. The California Institute for Regenerative Medicine poured millions into his projects, recognizing that Dr. Klassen wasn't just conducting research, he was pioneering a new frontier in human healing. His clinical trials were approved by the FDA, his methods were replicated worldwide, and his name became synonymous with medical breakthrough. Yet success came with an unexpected price. As Dr. Klassen's reputation grew, so did the pressure. He found himself trapped in an endless cycle of research grants, peer reviews, and academic politics. The medical establishment that once celebrated his innovation began demanding more. Faster results, larger trials, broader applications. Henry, now in his 50s, began questioning whether his life's work was truly serving humanity or merely feeding the insatiable appetite of an industry more concerned with profits than patients. Colleagues noticed a change in the once passionate researcher. The man who used to work 18-hour days in the lab began leaving earlier, spending more time in solitary reflection. Something was stirring within Dr. Klassen's soul, though he couldn't yet name it. The transformation began, ironically, through Henry's patients. As he restored sight to individuals from diverse backgrounds, he encountered something that no medical textbook had prepared him for: the profound spirituality of those who had lived in darkness. Muslim patients in particular displayed a unique response to regaining their vision. Instead of focusing solely on what they could now see, they spoke constantly of what they had always felt: the presence of Allah, the beauty of creation invisible to the eye, the interconnectedness of all existence. Henry found himself lingering after appointments, drawn to conversations that extended far beyond medical consultations. These patients spoke of submission to divine will with a peace that Henry, despite all his achievements, had never experienced. Then came October 2023 and everything changed. As news of the conflict in Gaza dominated headlines, Dr. Klassen watched in horror as hospitals were destroyed, medical personnel were killed, and children lost their sight to bombings and trauma. But what struck him most profoundly wasn't the tragedy itself, it was the response of the Palestinian people. Through social media and news reports, Henry witnessed something that defied every rational explanation his scientific mind could offer. Here were people facing unimaginable suffering, yet their faith remained unshaken. Children who had lost their eyesight spoke of Allah's wisdom. Mothers who had lost everything still found strength in prayer. This wasn't mere resilience. This was something transcendent, something his years of studying the human condition had never prepared him to understand. March 10th, 2024, marked the beginning of Ramadan, though Dr. Klassen barely noticed the date. He was in his laboratory late that evening, supposedly reviewing data from his latest clinical trial, but his mind kept wandering to the videos he'd seen from Gaza. A young Palestinian boy, blinded by shrapnel, had told reporters that losing his physical sight had helped him see Allah more clearly. The statement haunted Henry. Here was a child who had endured what no child should endure, yet spoke with a wisdom that surpassed Henry's decades of education. That night, for the first time in his adult life, Dr. Klassen found himself questioning not just his work, but his entire worldview. What if healing wasn't just about repairing tissue? What if there was a dimension to human existence that science, for all its power, couldn't touch? What followed were the most intellectually honest weeks of Henry's life. The man who had built his career on empirical evidence began exploring faith with the same methodical approach he applied to his research. He read the Quran, studied Islamic philosophy, and engaged in long conversations with Muslim colleagues he had previously known only professionally. Dr. Ahmed Hassan, a fellow ophthalmologist who had been quietly observing Henry's spiritual journey, became an unexpected guide. Ahmed didn't push or preach. Instead, he simply answered Henry's questions with the patience and wisdom that comes from deep faith. Henry learned about Islam's emphasis on knowledge, its reverence for those who heal others, and its teaching that every act of healing is ultimately guided by divine mercy. The breakthrough came during a surgical procedure on March 14th, 2024. Dr. Klassen was performing a complex retinal transplant on a young Muslim woman who had been blind since birth. As he carefully guided stem cells into position, something extraordinary happened. The patient, conscious under local anesthesia, began quietly reciting verses from the Quran. Henry had heard Arabic before, but this time was different. Despite not understanding the words, he felt something shift within his chest, a profound sense of peace he had never experienced. When the procedure was complete and the bandages removed days later, the patient's first words upon seeing weren't exclamations of joy or gratitude to the doctor. Instead, she whispered, "Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Praise be to Allah, Lord of all worlds." In that moment, Dr. Klassen realized that he had been the instrument, not the source of this miracle. March 15, 2024 would forever divide Henry Klassen's life into before and after. Unable to sleep, he sat in his study surrounded by medical journals and religious texts, wrestling with a decision that would change everything. The rational part of his mind catalogued all the reasons to maintain the status quo: his reputation, his research funding, his position in the academic community. But his heart had already made its choice. As dawn approached, Henry realized that his entire career had been preparing him for this moment. Every sight he had restored, every darkness he had illuminated, every miracle he had witnessed in his laboratory had been leading him toward this ultimate truth, that healing comes not from human hands alone, but from divine grace working through them. The video that would soon go viral was filmed in a small Islamic center near the UC Irvine campus. Dr. Henry Klassen, still wearing his white lab coat from the hospital, sat cross-legged facing the imam. His voice trembled as he raised his finger and declared the words that would transform his existence. "Ashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasul Allah." The tears streaming down his face weren't tears of sadness or fear, but of overwhelming relief. For the first time in his 50-plus years of life, Henry felt complete. The imam embraced him, whispering, "Welcome home, brother." And in that moment, Dr. Henry Klassen became Abdul Haq, servant of the truth. The scientific community would be stunned, the media would speculate, but Henry had never been more certain of anything in his life. News of Dr. Klassen's conversion spread like wildfire through both academic and religious communities. Colleagues who had worked with him for decades expressed bewilderment, unable to reconcile the rational scientist they knew with the man who had embraced what they saw as blind faith. Medical journals that had once competed to publish his research now questioned his objectivity. Grant committees whispered about his mental state. But for every voice of criticism, 10 voices of celebration arose from the Muslim community worldwide. Messages poured in from Gaza, from patients he had treated, from Islamic scholars who welcomed his unique perspective. Dr. Ahmed Hassan later reflected that Henry's conversion had done more to bridge the gap between faith and science than years of interfaith dialogue. As Abdul Haq began his journey as a new Muslim during the holy month of Ramadan, something beautiful emerged. Far from abandoning his scientific pursuits, he discovered that Islam actually enhanced his understanding of his work. The concept of serving Allah through serving humanity gave new meaning to every procedure, every research project, every patient interaction. His first Ramadan fast was observed despite a demanding surgical schedule, and colleagues marveled at his increased focus and compassion. Abdul Haq began incorporating Islamic principles into his medical practice, seeing each patient as a trust from Allah, viewing his healing abilities as divine gifts to be used responsibly, and approaching medical mysteries with humility rather than arrogance. His research took on new dimensions as he explored the spiritual aspects of healing mentioned in Islamic texts. True to the inspiration that had sparked his conversion, Abdul Haq immediately began working to support medical efforts in Gaza and other conflict zones. He established partnerships with Islamic medical organizations, offering his expertise in treating trauma-related vision loss. Through video consultations, he began training local doctors in advanced retinal reconstruction techniques, sharing knowledge that had previously been confined to elite Western medical institutions. His conversion had opened doors that his academic credentials alone never could. Palestinian medical students began reaching out to him, seeing in his story proof that truth transcends cultural and religious boundaries. Abdul Haq often reflected that in losing his old identity, he had found his true purpose. Today, as we conclude this remarkable story, Dr. Abdul Haq continues his groundbreaking research at UC Irvine, but with a perspective that transforms everything he touches. His laboratory has become a unique space where cutting-edge science meets spiritual wisdom, where the restoration of physical sight serves as a gateway to discussions about spiritual vision. His story challenges the false dichotomy between faith and reason, proving that the greatest scientists have always been those who remain humble before the mysteries of creation. But this is only the beginning of Abdul Haq's story. His recent announcement of a new research initiative combining Islamic bioethics with stem cell therapy promises developments that could revolutionize medical practice worldwide. And whispers from his inner circle suggest that another major announcement is coming, one that will once again shake both the scientific and religious worlds. The man who once helped others see clearly has finally gained true vision himself, and the world is watching to see where this newfound clarity will lead him next.